Greetings. I'm checking in from Kiev, Ukraine, which is a good place to be if you're working remotely or if you're location independent. I'm enjoying it right now and I recommend it. But anyway, let's move on to the topic at hand, which is the stocks billionaires are buying, selling, and holding right now, or specifically in Q2 of 2021, which is the most recent quarter that we have information for. So this has been a popular topic in my past videos, and I think it's because it's pretty useful to know which stocks billionaires are buying, selling, and holding. And if you look at the stocks that they are trading, you are allowing these billionaires and top fund managers to basically do the investment research for you and screen stocks for you. And when you look at the stocks they bought and the stocks they're holding, you're getting a group of stocks that have been vetted by professionals and by their research teams, which are pretty good because they have pretty good track records. And this allows you to narrow down your field of stocks that you're looking at and do more focused research, which can be helpful to a lot of people. And basically, they're doing the research for you, they're vetting stocks for you, and this makes it easier to pick stocks to invest in. So anyway, if you're wondering why we have this information, it's because the law in the United States requires big institutional investors to release their holdings and trading activity. And because a lot of billionaires have these holding companies, they are required to show the public what they're doing. And that's why we have this information, and a very useful website to find this information and to see what stocks billionaires are holding and what they're trading and their trading activity is dataroma.com, which I will link in the description. But anyway, let's move on and look at the stocks some great investors are investing in. Let's start with Warren Buffett, who is probably the most famous investor of them all. He has the best track record of any investor, and he has a net worth of 104.4 billion US dollars. So if you look at his holdings, you can see that he is a value investor and he is a long-term investor. A lot of his holdings were accumulated over years, and he likes to hold stocks over a long period of time. That's his investment philosophy, which I endorse and I recommend, because predicting how stocks will do in the long term is much easier and much more rational than predicting how stocks will go in the short term, which is very unpredictable and can be quite volatile. So anyway, let's look at his trading activity. So for the most part, he made a few adjustments, but he also sold some positions fully in a few companies, such as Liberty Global. And you should remember that name because that name will come up in the next billionaire we look at. But anyway, that's his trading activity. Now let's look at Bill Gates, one of the richest men in the world with a net worth of 130.8 billion US dollars. Bill Gates isn't a professional investor. He didn't get rich through investing. He got rich through Microsoft, which is pretty impressive of him. But when you look at his investment activity, just remember that he isn't a professional investor. But if you're interested to know what he's doing investment-wise, then let's take a look. So if you look at his holdings, we can see that over 50% of his portfolio is in Berkshire Hathaway, which is Warren Buffett's holding company. So obviously this means that Gates really trusts Buffett's judgment when it comes to investing. And he relies on Buffett to invest for him through his holdings in Berkshire Hathaway. And if you look at Bill Gates' trading activity, you can see that he also increases holdings in Berkshire Hathaway. So he is really relying on Warren Buffett here to invest for him. And his trading activity actually is quite similar to Berkshire Hathaway. Remember, I mentioned to keep an eye on Liberty Global. Bill Gates also sold 100% of Liberty Global, like Warren Buffett. But anyway, for Bill Gates, he is pretty reliant on Warren Buffett in terms of investing ideas and also in general, because he's literally relying on Warren Buffett by putting his money in Warren Buffett's holding company. Let's move on to another great investor, Carl Icahn. So Carl Icahn has a really good track record, and he has a net worth of 15.6 billion US dollars. So like Buffett, he is also a value investor, and his holdings are for the long term. And you can see a pattern here. A lot of successful investors are long-term value investors. But anyway, let's look at his trading activity. So Carl Icahn made a few small adjustments, and when you look at these small adjustments, which is trades of very small percentage points, just remember that a lot of the times fund managers have to free up cash, and they have to sell off some of their stocks to free up cash. And that doesn't mean that they necessarily think that this is a bad investment. It just means that sometimes they have to free up cash by selling stocks they own, even though they think it's a good investment. So keep in mind that note, and you should also look at his more significant trades. So there are some significant sell-offs. He sold off 100% of Herbalife and Tenneco. So if you notice a pattern here, so far a lot of investors have been selling a lot of stocks and not really buying too much, which can tell you something about the climate of stocks right now. So if you want more investment ideas, I suggest you look at hedge fund manager David Tepper, because unlike a lot of other successful billionaire investors, David Tepper is a much more frequent trader. He does a lot every quarter. He buys a lot of stocks, he sells a lot of stocks, and he holds a lot of stocks. He's pretty much almost a day trader. I don't want to call him that because I don't know how frequent he trades, but he does trade very frequently, which is very unlike a lot of other successful investors who are more long-term and more concentrated in their investments. But anyway, David Tepper has a net worth of 14.6 billion US dollars. And if you look at his holdings, he holds a lot of stocks, which is a testament to how frequent he trades and how much he really diversifies his portfolio, which is a common recommendation among financial advisors. But for very successful investors, if you look at Carl Icahn, if you look at Warren Buffett, if you look at the next investors I'll talk about, they're much more concentrated. But anyway, for David Tepper, let's look at his trading activity. So as you can see, he is a very active trader, like I said before. He sold a lot of stocks. He sold a lot more than he bought, which is a pattern that we noticed with the previous billionaires we looked at. And there are also many significant sales. And I want to add that I personally prefer longer term investors with less frequent trades. And there are a few reasons why that is. So first of all, for tax reasons. When you hold stocks long term, you get taxed a smaller rate. And that can make a big difference because taxes are pretty significant expenses. And also because long-term investing is more predictable and more rational. If you look at companies and stocks on the long term, you can more reasonably predict how they will do over a few years. It's very hard to predict how they will do the next day or the next week or even the next month. And stocks can be pretty volatile. There can be a lot of irrational behavior with investors and traders on the short term, but on the long term, people tend to be more rational and they tend to approach their fair value, which gives you an opportunity to do a rational analysis. Now, going back to more long-term value-oriented investors, let's look at Bill Ackman, who has a net worth of 2.9 billion US dollars. So Bill Ackman has a very good track record. And if you look at his holdings, you can see that he is a very concentrated investor. Probably the most concentrated investor you will see on today's video. And like Buffett and like Icahn, he is a value investor and has a similar investment strategy. But Bill Ackman is even more concentrated than Buffett and Icahn because He is a high conviction investor. He finds only a few stocks he really believes in, and he puts a lot of his portfolio into them. And this is often a very good way to grow your portfolio if you know what you're doing, but it is risky if you don't know what you're doing. So with David Tepper, diversifying your portfolio is easier to do because you're spreading out your risk. But if you're concentrating your portfolio into a few stocks, then you really have to believe in these stocks and believe that they will do well. So anyway, that's Bill Ackman's strategy, and don't believe that he is a big risk taker. He's not. He really vets out the stocks and screens out the stocks, which is why I think he's one of the best investors to look at in terms of getting investment ideas, because he really screens out the stocks and you can only get the best stock ideas from him. So anyway, let's look at his activity, which isn't much. It's basically a bunch of small adjustments to free up cash. Maybe some investors are pulling out, maybe some investors are requesting cash, but fund managers have to free up cash. It doesn't mean much in terms of their view on the stocks that they're holding. Lastly, let's look at Seth Klarman, who's a hedge fund manager with a net worth of 1.5 billion US dollars. So Seth Klarman, he's not like Bill Ackman. He trades a lot more frequently and he spreads out his holdings. So you can see from his holdings, he has a lot more holdings. But he's also not like David Tepper in that he trades like crazy and there's so much trading activity. So he's kind of in between Bill Ackman and David Tepper. But you can see from his activity that you can get more investment ideas from Seth Klarman because he does more activity than Bill Ackman. But again, like I said, Bill Ackman I think is better to look at because of the stocks he does invest in. Those are high conviction investments which are really screened out for you. But anyway, there are a lot of adjustments in his trading activity, again, to free up cash, but there are also a lot of significant trades which can tell you a bit more about what he's thinking in terms of which stocks are good and which stocks are not so good. These are the stocks billionaire investors are buying, selling, and holding right now. So this is the most recent quarter that we have information for, and don't worry that you don't have live intel on what these billionaires are doing, because most of these billionaires are long-term investors. If you look at Warren Buffett, if you look at Carl Icahn, if you look at Bill Gates, who pretty much just follows what Warren Buffett does, if you look at Bill Ackman, they are very long-term investors. So what they're doing will give you a long-term strategy. So it doesn't matter if they did it last quarter or even a few quarters before, because these are longer-term strategies. With David Tepper and Seth Klarman, they're more frequent traders, more so for David Tepper, less so for Seth Klarman, who has a longer-term mindset. But even then, a lot of their investments are long-term. So if you think about what they're doing on the long term and also look at their past trading activity, that will give you better long-term strategy. So it does not matter that you're not getting real-time information on what they're doing, because the stocks they're investing in, they're not supposed to realize their gains for often a few years. So these are supposed to give you long-term investment strategies. But anyway, thank you for watching, and I hope this video helped you in your investment research. Make sure to subscribe if you want to learn more about investing, about business, about money, about self-improvement, because I aim to teach, I aim to inspire and motivate and help people succeed, to build wealth, and to live the life they want to live. So thank you for watching. Good luck on your investment journey, and I'll see you guys in the next video.